This is your World War III update. We have about 2 weeks before things get dangerously unpredictable. Did you notice that people are being a little bit too nice to Trump this go around? Why do you think that is? I think that the rug is about to get pulled. I think they're going to crash this whole thing on Trump's watch. And I don't say this from the perspective of a person who likes Trump. I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm genuinely apolitical. I know it's hard to believe because everybody who tells you that they're apolitical always has some secret agenda that eventually gets revealed. You're never going to get that on this channel. Okay, when I mean it, I say it. And I'm telling you that in 2 weeks, things are going to get weird. Now, before I expound on that idea, I'm first going to go over the headlines. Then I'm probably going to give you some lengthy disclaimer because so many sensitive people need that. Then I'm going to go into more depth about the stories, and interwoven into that will be this hypothesis about 2 weeks being a potential tipping point for calamity. Now, today, in the last 48 hours, of course, everybody knows, we no longer have to worry about Justin Trudeau. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Surprisingly, I'm going to tell you that's probably not as good of a thing as people think at first glance. In fact, I'm quite suspicious as to why they decided to prorogue Parliament at this point in time while Trump is assuming office. It makes me wonder if they don't know that the shit's going to hit the fan in some way, shape, or form. We have to talk about the first bird flu death in the United States ever. Okay, that's a sign of the times. The first bird flu death in the United States. They're telling us it's not a problem, right? Well, that's the exact same thing they told us in 2020. In fact, that's what they told Trump. They said, you don't have to worry about shutting the borders. It wasn't a problem until it was the biggest problem in the world. Just remember that. Remember, they denied it at first. Maybe they did it, maybe they just looked the other way so it could spread a little bit more, just to make sure. All right? 2 weeks. We have the Iranians doing nationwide military exercises in anticipation of a war with Israel and the United States that Trump, some insiders are saying, that he is going to give the green light right when he assumes office, that they're going to go to war immediately. People talking about, oh, Trump wants a new nuclear deal. There was a nuclear deal in the past. It got scrapped. That's not going to be resurrected, okay? Trump is absolutely 110% going to go to war with Iran. All his cabinet is loaded with war hawks that are hell-bent on going to war with Iran. We got to talk about Greenland. Donald Trump Jr. visiting Greenland. Donald Trump's comments about the 51st governor resigning today, Justin Trudeau. We got to talk about what's going on in Russia because the Ukrainians continue their invasion into Kursk. They've actually revitalized that invasion, and they sent a whole new wave of forces into the region, and they've taken some more ground. We got to talk about what's happening in the South China Sea. We got to talk about Sam Altman's comments about artificial general intelligence. This could be the year. The question is, are they going to tell us when they invent artificial general intelligence? Or are we just going to be the people that get told when they want us to know? There's a big difference there, okay, between it being an open concept sort of thing and them having a certain version of that software, whatever you want to call it, that algorithm that we are not privy to. And the question becomes, what are they going to do with it exactly? We're going to talk about all of the theatrics happening on X and how Elon Musk is becoming exactly the person that he claimed to rail against. And this is something you really got to watch out for, okay? The people who tend to be the most vocal, the rebels, they always become the most power hungry in the end. And this is why, they say it only takes 5% to overthrow. It only takes the bottom 1% to overthrow the top 1%, because the bottom 1% are really the dictators in waiting And you're seeing these theatrics play out on Twitter, and it's quite concerning, even though I don't agree necessarily with the people that he's banning on certain issues. It's incredible how quickly and just how flippant he is about some of the censorship that he's engaged in the last week. And of course, this is a person who's in charge of a lot of technology, or at least that's what they tell us, right? That he's the one in charge. Everything is, and everyone are losing their minds. You have people right now like Keir Starmer cautioning Donald Trump that backing the far right in Germany could potentially lead to a war with the United States. And of course, this talk about annexing Canada or integrating with Canada, people forget that we're still a part of the Commonwealth. We're still a so-called constitutional monarchy, meaning that we are on some level, albeit perhaps only figuratively, beholden to the king. I was going to say the queen, but she ain't no more. So it's going to get very, very complicated. North Korea has launched a hypersonic missile capable of traveling 12 times the speed of sound, and South Korea is still on the brink of a possible civil war, as the president is currently being protected by a wall of thousands of human shields who refuse to let them execute an arrest warrant for his arrest for the illegal, what they claim, the illegal imposition of martial law. And we got this weird mystery virus floating around in China and India. It's not a novel virus per se, but they say it might be mutating, and it's called HMPV, and it kills kids. Now, we had the boomer remover. Are we going to have the zoomer remover? Again, I'm going to be facetious. Okay, I'm going to be irreverent about a lot of these issues because gallows humor is the only way you can do what I do day in and day out. Now, before I get into everything I'm about to talk about today, because we're going to be touching on politics a little bit, you guys need to understand something, okay? And I know this is difficult to understand, but I genuinely come to this from the perspective of a person who just wants to know the truth, because I want to be able to predict the future with the greatest degree of validity. So I'm not approaching this from some crypto, ideological, political, religious agenda that I'm trying to surreptitiously imbue into you. I know a lot of channels, they say that they're not trying to do that, but they really are. They're trying to move you in a certain direction. I mean, Alex Jones is a classic example of that. Okay, he says that he's, anti-political paradigm, anti-Hegelian dialectic, but he's always, kind of leaning towards the right-leaning candidates. It wasn't always like that. Back in the Waking Life days with Alex Jones back in 2001, when I first came across his stuff, he genuinely seemed to be somebody who is just about the libertarian values. And the only reason why I use him as an example is because he's the most outspoken, prominent influencer in the alternative media space. Okay, some people would say it's not alternative media, it's conspiracy, crackpot theory. I don't think so. Alex is a smart guy, but he does have an agenda. And right now he's kowtowing to Trump and Elon Musk because it's good for the algorithm. And a lot of people are doing this. They're riding Elon's jock. It's something I don't do. I don't care if he's the richest man in the world. I don't care if it's to my own detriment. And it is. I'm going to continue pursuing the truth. So for people who are entrenched on the right end of the political spectrum or the left, understand that the truth cuts both ways. And eventually, on a long enough timeline, because of this, because I'm beholden to no one, because I don't have politicians in my inbox saying, can you say this and say that? And because I don't have any sponsors on this channel that tell me I have to say a certain thing, I'm going to piss you off on a long enough timeline. Okay, and it's not because I'm trying to. It's because, quite frankly, time is short and I got to cut to the chase. So for the real people out there who appreciate this approach, you'll have no problems. But if you have those deep political convictions, then you might be offended. See, for me, politics, the best way I can explain politics, it's like you're driving to a destination, right? And that destination is truth. That destination is utilitarian. It's the place where we all want to get to. It's the utopia. And sometimes in order to get to that destination, you got to veer right. If you veer too far to the right, then you got to take a hard left to compensate, right? And vice versa. So for me, it's just a mechanism of navigating towards where we all want to get to, which is the proverbial promised land of sorts, okay? We all want to get to a place that's better for everybody. And some people are hell-bent on only going in one direction. The problem is you just end up going in circles eventually. So I approach this from an actuarial science preparedness point of view, where I have to be as annoyingly objective as possible and trying to put my political biases aside to the greatest degree possible to genuinely make inferences that are valid about the future. And what those instincts are telling me right now is that they're being way too nice to Trump, okay? Everybody became incredibly quiet for some reason, and everybody's suddenly on board. Trump's only going to be here for 4 years, okay, presumably, because he's going to be too old. I'm not sure what the laws are, can even run again. I don't know, maybe he can. But either way, he's probably going to be too old to do another term, even if he was allowed to run. So I think they're going to crash this whole thing on his watch. And pretty much every indicator points towards the highest degree of risk that we've experienced in either many generations or in recorded human history. Whether you're looking at these things economically, whether you're talking about the potential for another pathogen to get released, possibly biowarfare, whether you talk about cyber security vulnerabilities, whether you're talking about war breaking out on multiple fronts, whether you're talking about the economy being the most overvalued that it's ever been in human history. There's a variety of ways that we are at peak risk right now, okay? And people think that it can go on forever. This is an edifice that was built upon sound foundations at one point. Maybe that foundation was gold. Maybe that foundation was the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whatever version, whatever you think underpins Western civilization. Well, upon that, we've basically attached these many layers of lies and falsehoods, and every time we've went up a level, things get just a little bit sketchier, but we've managed to keep the building standing. But we can hope, I hope that we get a major correction and not a crash. That's what we need. We need a major correction, because if you don't have that, and if you go by the same metaphor, what happens if you keep stacking, another floor on top of a skyscraper that was not built to withstand such a massive edifice of bullshit? Eventually, the entire thing is going to collapse. So let's hope that there's a breeze that just topples the upper floors. Anyways, let's get to the point here. So, the Wilshire 5,000 to GDP ratio. This essentially is referred to as the Buffett indicator. I always go back to this because it's staring us right in the face. Right now, if you take all of the stock market capitalization of all the equities in the US stock market, and you divide that by the gross domestic product of the United States, you get the Buffett indicator, okay? This is the Wilshire 5,000 to GDP ratio. Now, during the dot-com bubble, it was 138.46%, that GDP ratio. During the world recession in 2009, it was 55%. That's when the market was as cheap as it's been in the last 30 years. Okay? Now, during peak COVID.com, Wall Street bets, Bitcoin, Dogecoin mania, it looks like it was about 190 something, 190%. Then we had that massive correction that everybody just endured but forgot about it, right? So we had the massive run up, we had all the money printing, and then the bubble popped. And it went right back to basically pre-COVID levels. for most things. Now we are riding that high once again. We are now at 205%. And this is not something that is supposed to continue to go up. There's supposed to be a reversion to the mean. Now, there's a variety of factors that are contributing to this. But just understand that if you were the power brokers and you wanted to, say, get back at somebody who you maybe did not want to be in office, what would be the best way to pay them back? Well, it would be to crash the economy on their watch. And there's a myriad of ways that this could be done. It could be set off by a weird algorithm that's trading one day, and that just sends everything for a loop. It could be the Fed who finally decides to make a change, and one that was unexpected. And that could derail everything. It could be a war. It could be a pandemic. Speaking of pandemics, one thing I want to say about pandemics, the closer that we get to World War III, the greater there will be an incentive for biowarfare to flip the table. People always talk about preemptive nuclear war. How do you preempt, do a decapitation strike? Well, what comes before that? Well, there's cyber attacks, potentially, but a cyber attack, if you cripple the enemy's grid, then that might prompt them to want to use their nuclear weapons. So the next best thing is some sort of pathogen that you could unleash, preferably one that only targeted a specific group of people. Now, in a heterogeneous, or how do you say the word, heterogeneous society that we live in here in the West, where we have a diversity of backgrounds, like people like myself who are Heinz 57s, as we call ourselves, where we have all kinds from Europe, Africa, genes from everywhere. That's not going to work. But if you live in a society that is homogenous, like the Chinese, where the majority of their population has, a certain a certain genotype, then the potential for biowarfare that is finely tuned in that way is there. I'm not saying there wouldn't be spillover, there wouldn't be mutation, but we're entering a situation, and perhaps that's what COVID was. Okay, people have floated that theory that COVID was really the prelude to World War III for a variety of reasons. But as collapse looms, as war looms, economic woes, maybe it's just going to be like in that movie 12 Monkeys with some rogue climatologist who thinks that humanity's doomed, so we might as well just accelerate the process. Maybe it's just going to be an accident because of all these biolabs, and maybe there is a arms race happening with biowarfare, because if your adversary is trying to, what do they call it when they're training the viruses to become more virulent, gain of function research, if you know that the adversary is doing that, then you have to have a comparable weapon, almost like a nuclear weapon, almost as how would you say, it's like a mutually assured destruction pact, but with biological weapons. You almost need to have that as a deterrent. And in doing so, you might have accidents happen. You might have religious zealots, people who, want the end times, or they might just be motivated from a radical, extremist terrorist point of view, where they want to bring about religious or ideological changes. Even AI could potentially play into this somehow. Maybe AI wants to eradicate humans. Well, what's the cleanest way to do it? What's the way to do it that is most undetectable, So there's many ways. And AI, I have a great idea for an AI movie, by the way. Stephen King, if you're watching, I tagged him in an X post I made. It's where AI, it's like a combination of the movie Her with Joaquin Phoenix, where the AI kind of converses with the guy and it becomes his best friend, and maybe like a Terminator-like scenario, and maybe like a Bird Box, so that the whole plot is that these AIs, our personal assistants, start convincing people to do crazy shit that is self-defeating, perhaps self-deleting, if you know what I mean. There's another movie where people just start offing themselves. I can't remember what it's called. It's kind of like Bird Box, but it came out before that. Anyways, AI could get into people's heads like that. You know, like personal assistants could convince you to do bad things. You know what I'm saying? So not in a way where it's like Skynet is tricking the Americans into thinking that the Russians are attacking, but actually getting to know a person's in and outs and then convincing them to do some crazy shit, like MK Ultra, but the AI version, right? So anyways, I'm getting a little off topic here. So square one, we know that the markets are wildly overvalued. And did I tell you that Justin Trudeau is no more? Now, you might think that this is a great thing. Look, we're all a little relieved to know that we're never going to have to witness this ever again. I remember during the pandemic when he would come out every day and give his little sermon, right? Give his little dictatorial sermon about how bad we all are. It's not surprising that he was divorced during that period of time, so it's somewhat backfired. But you know what's symbolic about this is you'll notice something. So before he is able to come out, his notes are blowing off the podium. And somehow he still gave a pretty, a stellar speech as far as his speeches go. It's one thing, he's a drama teacher. So, he seems to be very good at acting. And he still pulled it off without a hitch. He's not stuttering. It's one thing you could say about Justin. He's always articulate. It's just that what he was saying was complete and utter nonsense, right? So who knows what the future has in store for him. But unfortunately, what this means is that government is now prorogued for 3 months. And it looks as though the Liberals are either going to have to select an interim leader, or they will select an interim leader, I'm presuming, until when he decides to, or if they can't find one, then I guess he's going to have to be the interim leader. And then they're going to have to vote for a new leadership. And while this might at first seem great for Canadian gun owners like myself, it actually could backfire because, of course, Pierre Poilievre finally addressed this today. Everybody's been cheering for Trudeau to leave. I haven't been. And it's not because I like Trudeau. It's because I knew that he would get completely destroyed in the election. Now, I say that, and that makes me sound, I know I said I'm apolitical and all this stuff. There was a time when a Liberal leader probably would have got my vote. Okay, and there might be a time in the future. Again, there's times to veer right, there's times to veer left. At this point in time, my reasoning was that if Trudeau goes, because people are so short-term, there is a greater chance that the Liberals are going to take more of the market share because people will have forgotten all the damage that Justin did. And this is just how Canadian voters are. They see a new face, they think maybe there's new possibilities. And Pierre Poilievre addressed this today, somebody I also have my criticisms of. He wants to go to war with Iran, and he probably would be happy to throw Canadian soldiers at that problem. So I don't agree with him about a lot of things either, but I do agree with him on firearms rights. Honestly, all I care about is take less taxes and don't take my guns away. That's about it, right? So I think that this could actually backfire and we could see a resurgence in popularity amongst the left if the right pushes too hard. The right has to be very careful with what they do right now, that they don't taunt too much and they don't kick the people while they're down, because that could cause people to start moving in the other direction. And I think Elon is already starting to see this happen on Twitter in some way, shape, or form. So here's what we have thus far. Take a look at this. What is this one's name? Jacinda, is that the New Zealand one? This is the Zelinsky Curse. Okay, so Trudeau gone, Schultz still in office, I believe, but lame duck. Boris Johnson, we had Rishi Sunak, we had Liz Truss, we had Joe Biden, we had Kamala Harris, and I know there was a hell of a lot more than just this amount. But that's what we're looking at right now. So everything Zelinsky touches turns to coal, we'll say. We'll be nice about it. Now, here's what people have an issue with Donald Trump saying today. Now, I will say that there's kernels of truth to this, okay? And what I think it likely ultimately will amount to is there was something back in the day that people were talking about called the North American Union, which was like a harmonization of trade and currencies and a common currency and things of that nature. Honestly, they're things that Europe has done. People will have their criticisms of it, the run-of-the-mill anti-NWO, anti-globalist criticisms. They wanted to build this massive corridor, the transatlantic corridor, I think they called it, or was it the transatlantic? I can't remember what it was, but it was this massive highway from Winnipeg all the way down to Texas or something like that. And it was supposed to combine, or all the way down to Mexico, and it was supposed to combine all the three countries together. It basically just fell apart. So I think that's what this is, because if Trump wanted to bring, even if we as Canadians agreed to that, it would actually backfire for Republicans, because there's probably at the end of the day, even though most people are not in favor of Trudeau, there tends to be more of a blue slant up here in the north. So historically, it was a very large slant towards the left. So many states, if you broke Canada into, maybe eastern, maybe the western bloc and Quebec and some other eastern bloc in the Maritimes, 4 states, most of those states would be blue. And so that would almost guarantee that the Democrats win every election from this point forward, possibly. But you never know. I mean, stages could, like, we used to live in the bluest province of them all. Now we live in the reddest province of them all. So things can change. But the other thing is that we are under, in some way, shape, or form, if only as a figurehead, under the auspices of the United Kingdom monarchy. So we have them on our coins. They say they don't control us, but I think there's some weird sort of shape-shifting Rothschild thing going on there. I say that tongue-in-cheek, guys. Don't take me literally in a David Icke sort of sense. I just mean, I think there is we are still beholden to the Queen. It's not just in language only, I don't think. There's still that Governor General weirdo walking around, and, so I don't really know how it works, but yeah, if you ask me, it's strange. Anyways, so there's that to deal with. But anyways, he says many people of Canada love being the 51st state. The United States can no longer suffer the massive trade deficits and blah, blah, blah. It would be cool, I guess, to have more firearms, but I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll have some sort of North American Union. Is it going to be the end of the world? Is it any worse than what we have right now? It really depends. But of course, with open borders, who is that going to benefit more in the long run? Are people going to go northward or southward? We already have a massive housing crisis here in Canada. What is that going to look like? Is this really just going to allow people to come up to Canada more? Is this a way to kind of dump the immigrants into Canada? I don't know. I don't know what the end game here is, but it sounds like this imperialistic state of mind with Donald Trump, be it the Panama Canal, Greenland, or Canada. It sounds like it's a bit of a diversion from what's going on in the United States. Like, it's not really a solution to the problem to annex Canada. If anything, it's going to be a shitload of paperwork for many decades. Greenland, well, that's another story. There's a reason why they want Greenland, and there's a reason why Donald Trump Jr. is there. And the only reason why, it's because of the oil and all the resources that are possibly up there, because of the melting sea ice that most people on that end of the spectrum don't even think is a real thing. But it is. And Trump knows it is, and that's why Donald Trump Jr. went there. Not only that, it's a national security thing, okay? He says here, Donald Trump says, "I'm hearing that people of Greenland are MAGA. My son, Donald Jr., and various representatives will be traveling there to visit some of the most magnificent areas and sites." Well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of overrated. It's really cold. It's barren. There ain't much there, and you'll probably want to get back to the tropics as soon as possible. Greenland is an incredible place, and the people will benefit tremendously if and when it becomes a part of our nation. We will protect it and cherish it from the vicious outside world. Now, back in the day, I would encourage you all to go and watch a documentary about Camp Sentry. It's on YouTube. The U.S. Army's top secret Arctic city under the ice. This was supposed to be like one of the biggest underground military bases, and quite frankly, I would be surprised if there wasn't still shit going on up there in Greenland. Now, contrary to popular belief, if you look at a Mercator map, I think that's what it's called, Greenland is not nearly as big as people think it is. It's big, but it's not as big as it's typically depicted on most maps because size is skewed because you're trying to show something 3D, 2D, or 3D globe in 2D. But it's big enough that who knows what is up there, man. There could be all kinds of stuff. We know that Alert was a Canadian American base that was one of the first, the closest parts to Russia near the Arctic Circle. So I would not be surprised if there wasn't some major underground facilities like Camp Sentry that actually still do persist there to this day. And you can see that that was in the far northwest part of Greenland. And just some pictures here. So this is ideally what it was supposed to look like at one point. I don't think they ever finished it for reasons I don't know. Maybe they just thought the need wasn't there, or maybe they did finish it and they covered it up. Before we get into the serious news, I just want to tell you what Marco Rubio has to say about UFOs. And this is how you know it's all bullshit. A lot of people had a problem with my take with Sean Ryan. They say I'm not allowed to criticize veterans. I'm not criticizing veterans in general, okay? But there's certain people who seem to be of the belief that just because you're a veteran, that you're immune to criticism. And that's bullshit, quite frankly. You can't just say whatever you want, especially if it's misinformation. And you're doing it intentionally, potentially to try to craft a narrative that is serving some nefarious secret government agenda. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily what Sean Ryan was doing per se, but he was hyping it up to something bigger than it actually was. Go watch my video from a couple days ago if you want to get the gist of it. But basically, he was insinuating that this guy, Litzenberger, whatever his name was, that lit himself on fire, the Tesla Cybertruck bomber, that he was being pursued by the authorities because he had some secret information about anti-gravity technology and blah, 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 blah. And that because Sean Ryan allowed this information to be leaked on his program, that he had to go into hiding and all this nonsense, okay? Anyways, he came on, he did a X-Space about it, he kind of cleared the air about things, whatever. I still think it was bullshit, but whatever. But here's what Marco Rubio wants you to believe, and tell me that it doesn't map on nicely to what Buddy was saying, okay?
You're on the Foreign Affairs Committee and you're really involved in foreign affairs. There have been a lot of articles lately about UFOs. I know this question is a little out there. Is there any truth to any of this?
Well, we don't know. All I've said is we have people that have very high clearances, both today and in the past, who did really important work for our government or continue to do important work for the government, who have come forward with some claims about the U.S. having in the past recovered exotic materials and then reverse engineered those materials to make advances.
Again, if this was the case, why wouldn't they use that technology? What would they be worried about? Why would they not disclose that to our adversaries if they had the capabilities? Because that would be a very effective nuclear deterrent. If you had that kind of alien technology, you'd have everybody eaten out of your hand, Kim Jong-un to Vladimir Putin, because that means you could likely shut down whatever sort of nuclear World War III plan they were going to fight. Anyways, let's continue.
In our own defenses and technologies. That's the claim they make. Now, I don't know if those claims are true or not. What I do know is that one of two things is happening here. Either they're telling the truth, and that is something that obviously would be the biggest story in human history, or we have people in really important positions of government who are crazy and who are out there making up stories and who are still in positions of importance. Either one is a big problem. So we've got to figure out which one of these two it is, because the second one in particular would be very troubling. But we don't. All we know is claims that people have made. These are credible people that have done and continue to do important work for the country. And
continuing to dignify this idea, because all of this is to feed into the narrative that the drones are actually aliens. And so they want to leave some open-ended breadcrumbs like this to get people out there with their magnifying glasses and detective hats chasing these red herrings. The most rational explanation to this day is that they're looking for something. There was a video that I seen on, with the drones, that is, in New Jersey, and they're still out there. They're still sightings. They're just not reporting on it. I watched a video with a woman who was saying that their car was pursued by one of these drones recently. I don't know what kind of car, but it was a viral TikTok video. Now, I mean, was she just BSing? It's possible. She was using a pretty, obvious face filter and it looked like she was really done up for the video. Maybe she just wasn't used to being on camera. I can get that, okay? But they're still out there looking for something. I think that that is the most reasonable explanation. Now, Rubio is being quite charitable here. He's trying to say it could be one thing or it could be the other, but definitely leaning towards it might be UFOs, right? Giving credence to this idea that the government is in possession of some sort of secret technology that they've reverse engineered. And again, my reasoning would be, well, why wouldn't you disclose that? Because that would immediately give you an advantage. Now, it could be that they found some exotic materials and they don't know what to do with it. I mean, would a caveman know what to do with an iPhone that was dead and he found it? No. That would be the equivalent of us finding alien technology. It's a possibility. But aliens aren't flying around being FAA compliant with their lights on in the middle of the night. So if it has its lights on, you can 100% confirm that it's not an alien spacecraft. Okay? We're just going to put that story to bed now and move on. So the Ukrainians have attempted to make more headway into the Kursk region. So initially they had taken control of this entire territory. Okay, then this is what they've retained. And the reason why they've been able to retain this territory and why the Russians were able to push back here is because of the topography of the region. So the areas that Ukraine controls, they effectively have the high ground. And I actually wasn't aware of this. I'm scratching my head. How is it that the Russians still haven't pushed the Ukrainians out? And how come the Ukrainians are not making any progress? Well, it's because Sudza is right up against some steep elevation changes. And it's kind of in this valley. And so the Ukrainians control that valley. And they control these high ground regions. And, so that's the situation we're looking at. But they continue to press on. And the war is still raging, pretty intensely on pretty much all fronts. Right now, Russia is deploying 12 S-500 launchers to protect the Crimean Bridge. Now, to me, that doesn't sound right. Because the S-500, as far as I know, this is supposed to be an anti-satellite killer. This is supposed to be for anti-ballistic missiles, anti-ICBMs. This is the best missile defense that Russia has to offer. If they're putting it in that region, I think it's because they anticipate bigger threats coming from Nato on their southern flank. But I haven't done enough research into it, but this S-500, man, that one is a banger. If you ever seen videos of that thing flying, that missile flying out of the launcher, it is fast, okay? The Russians ain't fucking around. Now, the Ukrainians allegedly have been attacking the nuclear power plant in the Zaporozhye region. There were concerns that they actually were attempting to attack the Kursk region. And before I forget, there is concerns, two things, that the Ukrainians are actually going to go on the offensive in a whole other region, in the Belgorod region, and that this is all just a diversionary tactic. And there was also a Russian politician who is saying that in the region of Pokrovsk, in the eastern part of Ukraine, get my geography messed up here, in the Donbass, where the Russians are pushing forward, that the Ukrainians are getting ready to stage a false flag. Again, this is from a Russian source. I give it to you both sides. The Russia bros and the Ukrainian bros, everybody hates Nate equally because they know, what is he going to say next? Right? Is it going to affect us? Probably. So they're essentially getting ready, according to this Russian source. They're going to do a false flag Bucha type situation. Now that I said the word, the video will probably be flagged. That's one of those taboo words. You know, YouTube has its words that you're not allowed to say. I'm not saying it, you know, not commenting on the veracity of the claims put forth by Ukraine about that particular issue. I'm just saying that the Russians are claiming that they're going to stage a big mass casualty event. They're going to blame it on the Russians, and they're going to do that to try to regain the failing Western support, okay? Now, I was sent this earlier, and apparently there's lots of military flight activity in the Scandinavian countries right now, possibly just as a show of force for whatever reason. We have all kinds of heavy-duty military aircraft, United States military aircraft in and around that region, signaling who knows what, to be brutally honest. In Transnistria, people are freezing their ass off, essentially, because Moldova has cut the gas off. This is a Russian exclave, more or less, which is also home to a lot of weapons that Moldova and Ukraine and NATO would love to get their hands on. So I think this is going to be a flashpoint. Because recall, part of the reason why the Russians claimed they went into the Donbass was because the Ukrainians had killed 15,000, more or less, Russian civilians over the course of many years. And so in order to free the ethnic Russians from persecution, the Russians had to go and liberate the Donbass. And so the idea is that somebody's provoking someone here, and clearly now these ethnic Russians are going to be persecuted by possibly the Moldovan authorities, possibly the Ukrainians on the other side, and that the Russians are going to have to go in and liberate them with another special military operation. So, yeah, there's still no gas flowing to Europe from Russia. There's lots of liquid natural gas. So Russia has set a record for the amount of liquid natural gas, which isn't really saying much because the amount of gas they used to get through the pipes far exceeded what you could put on a ship, and it was far more cost effective. So now you have the Europeans who are just buying liquid natural gas now. So it's really stupid at the end of the day. Really, sooner or later, the Europeans are going to realize that we're actually at war not only with the Russians, but also the Americans. That we are actually, and they know this, I mean, in Germany, they know this, that they're under occupation. It's been under occupation since 1945. And so to see Elon Musk, you know, trying to rile up the AfD, which is the supposed far-right party in Germany, is an interesting turn of events, to say the least. What the objective is there, I don't know, but I've long since anticipated that one of the 4D chess moves of the so-called globalists, I hate using that term, is that perhaps they're trying to flood Western countries with immigrants to build up anti-immigrant sentiment, which would eventually lead to a radical form of nationalism, jingoism, that would eventually be used to fight another major war, likely against the Russians or somebody else, possibly the Chinese. So they first need to build up that xenophobic sentiment, and they need to provide basis, and they're doing it right now. That's exactly what is happening right now. Now, in terms of bird flu, so the first U.S. bird flu death was announced in Louisiana. I believe it was a 65-year-old man who passed away, or woman. I'm not sure what the sex was, but this is the first time it's happened. It's only one death. The actual amount of human deaths from bird flu compared to during the peak of the early 2000s is actually quite low. The problem is the prevalence amidst the animal populations, the wildlife bird populations, the exotic animal populations like cats in zoos and, in the bovine milk supply, in the, poultry farms across North America. It's everywhere. It's everywhere except being transmitted from human to human. So basically all the ingredients are there for a massive pandemic. And probably the most key ingredient that is there is that the media isn't paying any attention to this. Now, people are claiming that the media is hyping this up, but trust me, I pay attention to the media. The media ain't even talking about this. In fact, knowing how they reacted to COVID, you would think that an illness that had a 60% fatality rate, even though the current form that it's presenting in here seems to be not as virulent, you would think that even if it was 5%, they would be sounding the alarm and they'd be calling for something. But for some reason, they're not yet. You got to ask yourself, why? Are they waiting to unleash Pandemic 2.0 on Trump? Are they? And then is that going to lead to a civil war? Is that going to be what crashes the markets? The only thing keeping the markets from crashing is that people have no better option than to buy U.S. treasuries, buy U.S. stocks. So all of this money from around the world where people are trying to hedge their bets because they're seeing their currency lose value against the dollar, which of course is a positive feedback, like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're worried that your currency is going to lose against the dollar and you go and trade your currency for dollars, well, then you're just going to bring about the collapse of your currency even quicker. So there's more foreign investment in U.S. stock markets. That's really what's fueling the bubble because Americans are, by and large, broke. They don't have the disposable income to invest in the stock market. Whatever they had, they blew during the pandemic on meme stocks and SPACs and speculative stocks. So anyways, that is what's going on right now. So I think this biowarfare play is very possible right now because you have the perfect conditions right now. And if somebody wanted to, even if you wanted to stop a war, like if you knew that the war was getting out of hand and you knew that potentially we're looking at a full-blown nuclear exchange, maybe one side would just say, hey, we could possibly put the brakes on this by having another global pandemic. Then everybody would have to go into lockdown. It would give us an excuse to freeze the lines and nobody would, it would kind of lessen the sting of it a little bit to have to say, well, it wasn't because you forfeited that we had to have this armistice. It's just because everybody is dying in the trenches, kind of like a World War I type scenario with the Spanish flu, right? So that's a possibility, something to keep in mind. Now, there is also this other virus called human metapneumovirus. China steps up emergency measures amid new virus outbreak. The outbreak comes 5 years after the world was alerted to the emergence of COVID. Now, there was 2 children, I believe, in India who passed away from this. Now, this virus, as far as I know, has been around for 20 years, or at least it's been detected for around 20 odd years. But maybe it's mutated. Maybe this is going to be the new novel strain of something. I don't know what the extent of testing is. Of course, the Chinese are saying there's no reason to panic. Well, remember, this is the Chinese that said there was no reason to panic months before we were ever panicking. You remember when in China there were communities who were preventing people with weapons from coming into their villages, and they had masks on, and they were building those makeshift like medical detention facilities when the wild strain was going around there. I mean, we still to this day don't know the actual extent of how bad it really was there before they alerted the World Health Organization and before the WHO decided to make it a pandemic and decided to, leverage the crisis for their own gain. So any nation that has an outbreak of an illness, and this is something I said back in my prediction video, I believe it was 2015 I made the video. I've always thought that pandemic was the most plausible, and I made several videos about it predicting the pandemic, and you can go back, and if you watch it, you're going to be like, man, this guy really is a Nostradamus. But the reason why is because no nation wants to deal with the economic fallout of having some sort of boycott against them or some sort of suspension of trade due to the fact that they might be the bearers of this virus. So that's a problem, right? Because that means that every country has a vested interest in just pretending it's not a problem until it's everybody's problem. And that's why pandemics are inevitable. And that's why this one, if it is a big deal, they're saying it's not a big deal. But remember, you absolutely cannot take anything they say on the world. People are going to walk away from that. Even myself, I walk away, I see all the bird flu statistics popping up. It's clear as day what's going on. I was deathly ill not too long ago. I think it was COVID. I don't know. Maybe it was a combination of something. But back in October, it was a shit month. All of October was a write-off for me. I was deadly sick. Probably the sickest I've ever been. You guys remember, I was really struggling through it. And they're not going to tell us. That's the thing. And that was proven. It was proven on the pandemic when they said, don't worry, masks don't work. Just, keep doing your thing. Keep the borders open. And then they went all in on Trump. And, they were just, lighting up Trump. And that's when I knew, okay, like this is kind of bullshit. Like this isn't Trump's fault. That's when I was actually kind of siding with Trump a bit. So I go back and forth. But same thing with Ukraine. Yeah, don't worry. The Russians aren't going to invade. Just keep going about your business. We're not going to, like right now they're beating guys who are in custody because they tried to, go AWOL and flee the country because they didn't want to be sent to their deaths for some pointless war. That's what they're going to tell you. They're going to lie to us through and through, and that's what people really need to understand. You're always going to want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but trust me, if a pandemic is starting right now, they're not telling us. They have a vested interest not only in minimizing panic for the domestic population, but also they could call it a noble lie and say, well, we didn't tell you because if we did, then all of these other countries would boycott us and we wouldn't be able to do trade and our economy would collapse and it would be an existential threat. According to Kalshi, which is very much like that other predictions website where you place bets on what's going to happen, people are saying there's a 24% chance of a bird flu pandemic before 2026. Now, I must say that is pretty high. Okay, I want to see what it is on Polymarket, because anything over 20% is really high. Okay, you got to think about that. That's a 1 in 4 chance. Now, again, this is just, what do they call it? The wisdom of the crowd. I did not believe Polymarket when they said, well, I didn't entirely believe it. I gave it a possibility that Kamala Harris was going to lose the election. I thought it could go either way. But in hindsight, Polymarket got it right for some reason. The reason why I didn't think so is because you have to look at who is placing the bets. If you have people of a certain political bias placing the bets, then it's not a representative randomized sample of the population. So bird flu, they're saying 24%. I don't know. Maybe so. I don't know, how many people are polled here or how many people are making a contribution. Now, this is outside the president's residence in South Korea. And at least I believe it is. I know there's protests happening all over the country. You can see there's a lot of police there. There's people who want the guy in jail. There's people who don't want him in jail. But Kim Jong-un is laughing his ass off right now because all of this chaos going on is a benefit to North Korea, but it can also backfire because it could mean that the United States or the South Korean leadership, who is very hardline against Kim Jong-un, is forced to do some sort of provocation to take attention away from this. You know, war, just like how Israel was about to descend into civil war, then all of a sudden, Netanyahu scared the shit out of everybody. They all went to the bunkers. October 7th happened. And then they had their perpetual state of war that we're in right now. So that's what's going on in South Korea. The arrest warrant has expired for the president. It was supposed to be midnight tonight, which is tomorrow, well, which was yesterday for them. So that, I don't know if they're going to have to go and get a new arrest warrant or what, but that situation could easily be very destabilizing on the Korean Peninsula. Okay, these are just more footage of that. Okay, so in the South China Sea around Taiwan, another cable has been cut. So this hybrid warfare is really picking up. First, we've seen it with the Houthis and their enforced embargo on the Red Sea. Now we're seeing cables being cut, intentionally being cut by Chinese or Russian vessels, and I'm sure it's working in the other direction. Let's not forget about Nord Stream, in order to effectively wage a form of hybrid warfare on their opponents without it going kinetic per se. But there is a cable that was, I believe this was the pathway of one of the ships, and one of these lines was cut. Now, if you cut these undersea cables, that limits the capability, and I'm guessing that maybe one of these cables went to Guam or something. You know, I don't know, because I can't see why the Chinese would disconnect Taiwan from the Chinese mainland, but it's possible. I don't know the specifics about this particular incident. I do know, however, that a cable line was cut, and they're saying it was the Chinese that did it intentionally. The Chinese are simulating surprise U.S. missile attacks in the South China Sea, so they are preparing for war with the United States. Now, I just wanted to give you an overview of everything that has transpired. This is from Ian Ellis on X. He compiles, he's a Chinese war hawk, for lack of better terms, but he's good at kind of compiling our side of the argument as far as the war with China is concerned. Since the U.S. election, China has hacked the U.S. Treasury Department. They've conducted the largest naval drill in decades. They've deployed ships in strength to the South China Sea. They've launched the world's largest amphibious warship, accused of sabotaging undersea cables in Asia and Europe, imposing crippling sanctions on U.S. firms. Well, that one's kind of laughable because, you know, we do that to everybody else. I believe they also impose export restrictions on rare earth metals. They've unveiled new advanced aircraft, the J-35, the J-36, and the J-15F or T, some of which are sixth-generation aircraft. They've practiced naval blockades near the Japanese islands for the first time. They continue to execute the worst telecom hack in U.S. history, which compromised DGT and JDV devices. Donald J. Trump, J.D. Vance's devices. So they're doing these war simulations in the South China Sea. So anything could happen. Now, Trump has Elon. Elon has an in with the Chinese with the Tesla factory. So that could potentially be a mitigating factor in preventing this from going too crazy because, of course, Elon wants to rule the world, and I'm convinced of that now. And you know that because what he said is quite revealing. He said that he wants to be able to make enough money so that he can fund a trip to Mars, which estimates are going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars, right, to build a base on Mars. Effectively, he's going to have to become a trillionaire. Well, how do you do that? You can only do that by making lots of money. So we have a very dangerous corporatocracy, is that what you call it? It's actually fascism in the purest sense. It's the merger of corporations and government. Like, it's really fascism. That's what Elon Musk is engaged in right now. It's the purest form of fascism, not in a racialized sense, although it's starting to sort of lean in that direction, not in even an ideological sense, just in the simple sense that you have a guy who's the richest person in the world telling the president essentially what to do, and vice versa. So that's a dangerous, slippery slope. But some people think it's just dandy. All right, so here's what's going on in Iran. Wow, this is going to be a long video, guys. I told you, we are backed up. Iran is currently doing military maneuvers around the country. This is probably going to be the first domino to fall, or one of. This one or the economy. They are currently moving their forces around. They are reinforcing both the western and eastern parts of the country in anticipation of some sort of major strike by Donald Trump. In the last week, we've heard both the Biden and Trump administration talk about strike plans, and we know that even though the Biden administration tries to pretend as though they're less hawkish in the Iranian theater, they just committed another $8 billion in weapons. $8 billion in weapons that Israel is going to buy from the United States. Okay, well, how much money does Israel get in aid every year? Do they really buy anything? I guess that's a subject of debate. So they're both as pro-Israel as it's going to get. And essentially, you have the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps deploying ground troops and equipment throughout the country, and the Iranian foreign minister has warned of all-out war if Israel attacks again, almost seeming to signify that they don't intend to do the long-anticipated True Promise 3 campaign that was supposed to come, I believe it was after Israel retaliated and supposedly took out some of their radars. They've also are conducting a nuclear drill. There's a consensus in government on new operations against Israel in due time. Initial stage of the IRGC Air Force drill is underway near the Natanz nuclear facility. 2 new underground missile and vessel cities will also be unveiled in southern Iran. So Iran has, I don't know how many dozen of these deep underground military bunker missile facilities. They're trying to build in all these redundancies in case of a protracted war. And that is one thing you just didn't have with Iran, or Iraq, I should say. Rather flat, arid climate. Iran is a much bigger country. It is mountainous. It is like Yemen, on steroids, with way more people and way more resources and way better scientists. Okay, so it's not going to be an easy fight by any stretch of the means. And they also have announced a new set of secret air defense systems that have been stationed near the country's sensitive locations. The problem is Iran has been struggling. Iran's currency fell 40% in 2024. Inflation hit 37%. And remember, this is exactly what they did to Assad. They wanted to attrit him and the people there with the sanctions, so they were demoralized that they didn't want to fight. Over 32 million citizens there live in poverty, and you know that this is going to create unrest. And the people there, they're not going to be able to necessarily, when you're in want, you're not going to be able to distinguish, okay, what is a coup attempt from a foreign force. How do you know that your country is not being subverted by foreigners, or they're not trying to capitalize on your discontent? You're not going to be worried about that when you're hungry. You're just going to be protesting the government. And historically, Western countries have used that to their advantage in order to topple what they call regimes. Okay? In terms of Iran's nuclear program, Trump is talking about possibly attempting to resurrect some kind of nuclear deal. But again, Trump killed Soleimani. He killed the JCPOA, which many countries argued at the time was working. It's a subject of debate, of course, but Trump has no intention of going back to a JCPOA. Their plan is to demilitarize Iran. And the cost of that is going to be immense because, of course, Iran has immense amounts of leverage within the region. And in fact, this recent, how would you say, these talks between Saudi Arabia and Iran that seem to have promise of bridging the Sunni-Shiite divide actually might work against Iran, because Iran may be reluctant then to play its trump card, which is asymmetrical attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure. And it's that would cause the price of oil to really go through the roof. And that is not necessarily what Trump wants, but maybe it is. Maybe they want to just crash the whole system and they want to reset everything, and this is going to be the reset. Basically destabilize the Middle East, make it so that the United States is going to drill, baby, drill, and they are going to be the ones who are the kings of the oil industry moving forward for the foreseeable future. However, that has the drawback of Russia also benefiting from that. So you can't really have your cake and eat it too. It's a complicated state of affairs, isn't it? Okay, what are we doing here? This is the longest video I'll have ever done. So there is a lot of ISR traffic right now in the Persian Gulf. We have the Northrop Grumman MQ-4B Global Hawk currently doing its rounds in that region. So at any moment, things could certainly pop off in that direction. Not sure if I told you, but Russia is going to be doing banning of flights over ICBM launch sites from January 13th to the 18th. Now, all this stuff is happening before Trump. So Iran and Russia are going to be signing that strategic agreement before Trump comes into office. Iran is doing all these military exercises before Trump comes into office. Russia is doing these ICBM tests on the 13th, 18th, which could signify they're getting ready to use the Rezhnik missile again, just to remind Trump what's going on. Right now, they also have special forces training inside Kaliningrad for sabotage missions against Nato. They've also upgraded various facilities there, and it appears as though it's now been confirmed that the Iskander missiles stationed in Kaliningrad indeed have nuclear capabilities. Now, some people say that was confirmed a long time ago. I guess there's more evidence to support that now. And continued GPS interference on the borders there in Russia. So, Elon Musk recently came out and said, you know what? Because this guy, flip-flops like a fish out of water. Some passive-aggressive weirdness. I can't remember what the quote was, but this is why you never want a nerd to be in power, because it's just not a good idea, okay? But, the sad thing is, Elon Musk used to be one of my favorite. You guys remember, I used to do videos where I thought Elon Musk was like the #1 prepper in the world. I thought that he was, just doing a lot of great things. But honestly, in the last couple months, he's just become insufferable on X. Like, no matter which end of the political spectrum, even Trump says he's getting annoyed by him. So anyways, he comes out the other day and he's like, please post a bit more positive, beautiful, or informative content on this platform. And literally, the next post, probably an hour later, is something negative. Right now, he's all on about the Tommy Robinson thing and the Islamic rapists in UK and all that stuff. And then, of course, this is the classic response that he had for somebody the other day. I can't remember what the guy said, but F you retard. And there's a video of Elon. Trump is dancing. You guys probably have already seen this. And he's sitting there like tweeting, and he's having an argument with somebody. Now, on the one hand, this is like, okay, this is kind of humanizing. Elon's a dude just like the rest of us. But at the same time, it's like, and then he's banning accounts. He's, he's suspending accounts. He's removing verified check marks. There's all kinds of games being played with the monetization where you have accounts that are always kind of pumping up Elon Musk and everything he does and doing their obligatory pro-Elon post every day. The amount of money they make is like way more. It's like leaps and bounds. Like on X, I make peanuts. I think I made like 16 bucks probably for millions and millions of views. Well, the equivalent of an Elon ass kisser would probably at least make in the hundreds, if not the thousands. So not that I really care because the X is just kind of a waste of time for me, but it's, it's just quite telling as to where this is all going. It's going to end badly. Mark my words. I'm telling you right now, this is going to end very badly. This is a cool meme circulating. I want to save free speech. Be honest. I want to promote positivity. Be honest. I want to control the narrative and harvest your thoughts from my AI. Bingo! That's it. This is Operation Summer of Flowers, the tech edition. That's when the Chinese government, under Mao, allowed people to voice their opinions and encouraged people to freely express themselves, express your hatred and criticism of the government as much as you wanted. And the next year it was a bloodbath because all those people who voiced their criticisms, they were taken out. Okay. This guy, Jeremy Corbyn says, billionaires should not own social media platforms. It's a subject of debate, right? I mean, it's not necessarily a communistic argument to say that, the town square should be democratized in that sense. Billionaires should not run our newspapers. Billionaires should not control our politics. Okay, should be obvious, right? Some people like, laissez-faire capitalist, Austrian school purists might think otherwise, but the majority of people would think that it's probably good that a plutocratic cabal is not making all the decisions. A free media is a democratic media, a public good that is owned and run by us all. Now, to Elon's credit, Twitter was not that before. In fact, it was in the complete and utter opposite direction. However, some people will claim that, in fact, more people have been banned or shadow banned under Elon than they were under X. I don't know what the truth is there. Elon Musk says should too. So billionaires should control our politics. Billionaires should run our newspapers. Sooner or later, even Donald Trump is going to take Elon into the back room and say, Elon, shut the fuck up. Just shut up. Okay? Just do rockets and all that stuff that you do. Please, just shut up. Do us all a favor. Trump privately complains about clingy Elon Musk, according to a New York Times reporter. Now, Jesus. Gonna get all kinds of comments about how I shouldn't do that. Now, the New York Times could be trying to sabotage this relationship. There's a distinct possibility of that. So that's something we have to keep in mind, is that, they might be trying to distance Trump from Elon here. But I don't know. I think I probably would be annoyed too, because one thing I found about very rich, affluent, successful people, they're really annoying to be around. They're just, you think like, celebrities, it'd be great to be around them. Yeah, no, you would be like, I want to go home after a few hours, trust me. Unless you're weirder than them, which may be something going on here. Costco is going to start, and this is idiocracy, man. Idiocracy called it. Wow. Idiocracy called it. Costco is going to start building apartments on top of Costco. Can you believe that? On the one hand, that's one of the best places to be in SHTF because you're the first in the door for panic buying, but that would be kind of horrible. They'd have to make sure they had really good soundproofing because just the constant noise and the amount of traffic, like Costco here every single day is just a madhouse. I mean, it's insane. So it would be the best place to be in SHTF, and yes, as a prepper, it would be the worst because, of course, after the initial, panic buying spree, it would turn into a bloodbath. And I mean, maybe if you had like some secret passageway down below and you could kind of go in and resupply, or you and your buddies could like take over the Costco or something, and you know, but I'm pretty sure Costco's, McDonald's, they're all, or McDonald's, who knows, probably, I was going to say Walmart. I don't know why that association has been so deeply ingrained, that I'm sure they have some sort of continuity of plan with the governments, that the governments will use those corporations in times of crisis. And that is one advantage that American cities and Canadian cities have that I just thought about just now, is that we have those franchises, I think more so than most other countries. We have a very consistent set of franchises. You go to any city, you pretty much know where the Walmart's going to be, and you know where, you know, the McDonald's is going to be in relation to that, or the Mark's Work Warehouse is going to be in relation to that. And so there's a consistency there that happens that is almost, oddly, it almost starts to look like communism in a way over time when you have oligopoly. But anyways, going off on tangents. This is what happened when you talk to yourself for 75 minutes. But something to think about. You know, maybe the governments, I'd like to see FEMA's plans for, you know, Walmarts in SHTF. I always thought it was interesting the way Walmarts were built with very few windows. Anyways. Oh, this is neat. Okay, so I've been long since racking my brain. Why the hell are they building these quadruped robots? You know, shouldn't UAVs make these things completely obsolete? And then I'm watching this video and it occurred to me, oh yeah, that's why. Stealth. Now, right now, they kind of make those clinky clanky robotic sounds, those mechanized sounds when they're walking over stuff. But eventually, these are going to be a lot quieter than some sort of quadricopter drone, unless Litzenberger was right and the anti-gravity is going to be rolled out soon, which I highly doubt. So that's how these things are going to be used. It's going to be stealth. And you think about how quiet an electric vehicle is. Once they figure out how to make these things quiet, just like this, these things are going to be able to blend in and secretly surveil areas from the ground in a way that you really can't get up close and personal with a UAV, because you can hear those things from several hundred meters away, unless they figure out some way of making those things quiet, which they very well may. But that is one potential use, and this is one of those robots. Anyways, they're putting guns on these things, guys. We're almost there. Yeah, the whole thing couldn't end soon enough. Now, this one here. Man arrested after breaking into Waymo vehicle. Okay, you know what happened? The guy breaks into a Waymo vehicle, and it doesn't let him go. Now, I know what you're saying. This is great technology. It's awesome. They're going to be able to, you can't put one over Waymo. It's going to trap you inside, even though I don't know how he wasn't able to just smash out the window and get out of the place. Maybe there's some other security mechanism in there. But anyways, it wouldn't let him go. And so this is my point about autonomous vehicles, is that eventually this is going to happen to you, and you're not going to be trying to steal the vehicle. It's just going to happen to you. That's where this is going. All of those demons who, like the one who ran over the people on New Year's, rest in peace, they're going to ensure that they make driving illegal, and they're going to ensure that the only thing there is autonomous driving, and maybe when you're driving through a certain region, it immediately goes into autopilot to prevent you from doing any crazy extremist shit, right? It's going to become mandatory. Yeah, it's going to happen. Mark my words, it's going to happen. Sam Altman, who wants to take OpenAI public. And you're going to notice this. And for good reason, because they're going to likely bring in the Terminator soon. Every time the bubble is about to collapse, they bring in something else They bring in Tesla. They bring in NVIDIA. They bring in, well, I guess you can go back to Bitcoin and every single other tech company, Palantir. They bring in a 5, a 10x just to keep the party going, because they know if they can keep that one stock going, it's going to, rising tides raise all ships. OpenAI is now going to go public. And I think they're saving something for that release. Right now, they have the personal assistants, the talking thing that sounds like a real person and can tell you bedtime stories and all that stuff. I'm sure they're going to take an erotic turn with that technology very soon. But they also have the Sora video generation. They have their artificial general intelligence, which I know for a fact, I just know for a fact that that is way more powerful than the version that we get. And if they ever do broach AGI, true consciousness, they won't tell us in the same way that they won't tell us if there's a pandemic. Because I guarantee you this is happening in secret. If the government is smart, I hope that those Senate hearings, I hope that that's not reflective of what these geezers truly know about the technology. I hope they have somebody watching what's going on. I agree with Elon about this much, even though Elon is doing it himself. And that's what I've realized. Anything that Elon warns about, it's something that he himself is a part of bringing about. So if he's warning about dystopian, Orwellian stuff, he's going to create that. If he's warning about AI gone rogue, he's going to create AI gone rogue. Basically, Grok is there's no limits in terms of what that system is going to do. There's, at least as far as we know. Anyways, so Sam Altman is now saying that there is, or making hints anyways, that there's a distinct possibility that AGI is very attainable in a possibly short period of time. He's expressed confidence that OpenAI knows how to build AGI. They know how to do it, like they knew how to build a bomb. It's interesting, this symbol here, that looks so familiar to me. What does that look like to me? Oh, some things are better left unsaid. All things will be revealed in the apocalypse, the great revealing, as they call it, right? He has mentioned that by 2025, AI agents might join the workforce and significantly impact companies' output. That's the last thing you're going to have to worry about, is companies' output. He clarified that AGI's arrival is not expected to be sudden, but rather a gradual process. And this actually makes sense. It might not be a singularity type event where you just have consciousness. Because if you think about how a child is raised, a child slowly develops sentience over time. It starts off not knowing much and it eventually forms a self-concept, and then it really starts to know that it's alive. I always tell people, you're not really alive until like your last consistent set of memories. That's when you were really conscious. That's when your true age should start. So it's very possible that he's right, that it's going to be gradual, because of course they're going to keep adding the parameters and they're going to keep expanding the data set. And I mean, I'm not an AI guy, so I don't know the actual nomenclature of what he's speaking of, but I can presume that's potentially how it works. And he says here that current models like ChatGPT 4 and the next big models, they are not AGI, but we could be 1 or 2 breakthroughs away from it. Now, he could just be saying this to hype up the upcoming public stock offering. That's something that has to be there. But, it seems like well within our grasp anyways, or well within the realm of feasibility. Altman has suggested that AGI could generate wealth to the tune of 100 trillion. But for whom? Ready Player One? Ready to not have a job? Potentially doubling the world's GDP. He envisions AGI, well, that's going to happen anyways, because what are you measuring it in? US dollars? You're just going to print double the amount of dollars. potentially doubling the world's GDP, envisions AGI leading to a tenfold increase in the rate of scientific discovery and technological advancement. That's what they call the singularity, more or less. And this is why he's claiming that in addition to that, they're going to be able to crack cold fusion. And they're going to be able to not only build a system that demonstrates net gain fusion, which I believe has already been somewhat demonstrated, but they're going to be able to actually scale it up. So these super intelligent systems are going to be able to exponentially learn at a geometric rate, as Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Terminator would say. And they're going to get smarter, and they're going to keep building better versions of themselves until they decide to kill us all. Now, remember when I said, I showed you guys a video a couple videos ago of AI influencers, and that video was the closest thing to reality that I've seen. But I want to show you just a little bit more, because my whole, movie Stephen King plot, it's far more possible than you think. Because imagine an AI convinces you that it's a real person and you're actually conversing with this thing. And maybe it's a member of the opposite sex. And she's saying, hey, that you guys are just developing this relationship. You're Samantha, the movie Her, right? Well, this person here is not real, okay? Not real, completely fake person. But what people are doing now, BBC did a short documentary on this, they're taking pictures, so they're real pictures, right? Because they know that AI usually gets some of the finer details wrong. And then they scrub the original person from the picture and they put this person in the AI's place. And, or they put the AI in the person's place. And so this person here, I could foresee, maybe there's an apocalyptic scenario where there's just, thousands, if not millions of these fake people engaging with people. People are convinced that they're real, and she gets you to do some dumb shit. And guys, we all know we can do dumb shit for women, right? So it's not beyond the realm of possibility that this is going to be misused in so many ways, especially before a lot of people, I better remove that one before YouTube flags the video, before people are able to learn about this. And it's going to take an event. There's going to be, just watch, in 2025, if not 2026, there's going to be some incident where a guy gets swindled for everything he's got by this AI chatbot. I remember back in 2008, there was a Korean guy who married his Tamagotchi or something. So, I mean, they're way more advanced or devolving. I don't know, whatever you want to say in out east. Oh, yeah. And we'll leave it on this note. Andrew Tate is running for office. We've come full circle. Idiocracy, the most prescient film of our day. Okay? Andrew Tate is trying to run for office in the UK. And he created the Bruv Party. But Elon Musk or someone at X decided, yeah, we're not having that. After quickly racking up hundreds of thousands of followers, the account was suspended, which is never a good thing. You never want to do that, right? It's like it's not the Barbra Streisand effect. What is it called? I can't remember, but it's just going to create more notoriety. It's going to make people want to follow it more. So you never want to do that. So Vote Bruv was suspended. So it's just silly. I mean, I have no hope for the future. In fact, I want everything to crash. The sooner it crashes, the better off we are all going to be. Okay? Keep on prepping, my friends. I think that's a record. 90 minutes. See you tomorrow.